Steam hissed under a low slate sky as the noon freight squealed to a halt. Beside the wine-scorched platform of Dry Creek, Colorado Territory, 1874, 32-year-old Jasper Hollis, broad-shouldered, sun-creased, coat threadbare at the elbows, stood alone amid traveling salesmen and mailbags. He'd driven to Days from his failing Mesa ranch because winter calves were dropping early, and his last two hens had quit. Jasper's pockets held only 40 silver dollars and a folded notice that read, "Indenture auction for child laborers, rail ties and mining." For thin children shuffled onto the plank floor. Their eyes were hollow, movements mechanical, like gears in a broken watch. Bits snapped like spurs on a saloon floor. A girl in a frayed red shawl stood third in line, smaller than the others, hair hacked short, eyes gray as river stone. She didn't cry, didn't tremble, just stared out past the crowd, as if she'd already vanished into her own future. Lot. 3 able-bodied, cooks passably, the auctioneer barked. 35, Jasper said. A banker with a heavy gold chain laughed under his breath, but didn't counter. Sold. The hammer cracked. The girl didn't flinch, not at the sound, but something in her shoulders sagged like even silence was heavy now. Name on the ledger, Sarah Dawson, 12, term for years. Jasper signed. The pen scratched awkwardly, ink blotting like it was a shamed dot. He offered her a sip from his canteen. She drank without looking up, then handed it back with both hands, polite as a sermon. "Rides long," he said, nodding toward the wagon. "Call me Jasper," she whispered. "Sir." They left Dry Creek with no cheers, no goodbyes, just a horizon full of dust. The wagon rattled across the flats, iron wheels clanking over dry riverbeds and brittle weeds. Jasper tried soft questions. Horses, antelope, favorite color. She answered in nods so small they seemed like shivers. When he offered her a biscuit, she took half and passed the other back. When he offered his blanket, she wrapped herself tight, knees to chin, but never slept. The sun dropped low. Coyotes yipped in the distance. Jasper boiled beans and jerked a sliver of dried elk. He handed her a tin cup. She split it perfectly in half again. Jasper studied her in the firelight. Eyes far too tired for 12. Cheeks hollow, lips chewed, raw. No shoes, just rag-wrapped feet and bruised ankles. He remembered what his father once said. You don't measure a man by how loud he shouts, but by how he treats the quiet. Before bed, she startled at every snap of twig. At one point, she gasped awake, hands flailing against invisible ropes. Jasper stirred the embers, voice low. "Ain't nobody here to hurt you." She stared into the fire like it held her past. Her lips parted. "Why'd you buy me?" He didn't answer right away. Wind moved through the sage like breath through old lungs. "Because work shouldn't break children," he finally said. "That paper says for years. I say you stay only if you want." She blinked slowly, then sat up straighter. "My name's not Sarah," she said. "It's Lucy." He nodded. "Slow. Lucy it is. 2 days later, the sky split open with sleet. At the Cimarron crossing, runoff boiled brown and angry. The bridge was gone. Jasper paced the bank, jaw tight. "There's a ford downstream," Lucy said softly. "The loggers used it when I was little." They followed the bank until jagged rocks jutted out from the foam like dinosaur bones. He slapped the reins. The wagon groaned as the wheels hit the current. Midway through, one wheel sank with a jerk. Jasper leapt into waist-high water, boots slipping on the river bed. Lucy didn't scream, just rolled up her sleeves, leaned over, and reached down past her elbow. Her fingers found the stone, yanked hard, and the wheel popped free. The wagon lurched forward. They scrambled up the far side, soaked, panting, laughing. Rain sluiced the mud from Lucy's face. In the gray light, her freckles looked like constellations. That night, they made camp under a limestone overhang. Jasper dried his journal pages by the fire. He scratched a new ink. Day 1, ice, mud, and courage from a 12-year-old. Lucy picked up the stub pencil, wrote beneath, "Maybe tomorrow will be easier." Only the letter L signed the line drawn. Strong and proud, Jasper stared at the name, then at the girl who'd saved his wagon and barely flinched at thunder. A stranger less than 3 days ago. A partner now. "Ma, Pa," he whispered into the dark. "I ain't sure what I'm doing, but maybe kindness is a map." Behind him, her voice floated soft. "Maps help us find home." He turned. She was already asleep, curled beneath his coat, face to the fire, and for the first time in years, Jasper felt like someone might be following him through the dark. Not to take not to judge but just to walk beside him. Snow arrived like a stealth army, devouring the sage flats in white silence. By dusk the wind had thickened to a roar, slamming against the two-room cabin until every board groaned. Inside, Jasper and Lucy worked by lantern light, breath fogging. In the bitter air, the woodshed was still padlocked. Last hired hand took the key when he rode north. So Lucy dragged Tumbleweed across the yard while Jasper shouldered an axe, hacking at an ice-stiff stump until splinters flew like sparks. They fed the stove by the fistful, coaxing orange puddles of warmth across the plank floor until the frost on the window panes began to melt in TEARDROPS. When the cabin finally sighed with heat, Lucy wandered to the mantel and lifted a cracked photograph, a young woman cradling a newborn, sunlight pinned in her hair. Jasper saw her trace the edges with a fingertip, gentle as if touching a ghost. He said nothing. Grief was a scar he rarely uncovered, but the way Lucy set the picture back carefully centered, dust wiped from the frame, was a balm he hadn't expected. By nightfall, the blizzard rose a step further. A shutter tore loose and snow spiraled through the open gap, tumbling across the table like spilled flour. They fought the gale together, Jasper holding the window, Lucy driving home a nail with the heel of a boot, both laughing at the absurd dance of hammering in darkness while the world tried to bury them. Her laugh, bright and unbelieving, warmed the room more than the stove. Dawn crawled in, bruised and pale, drifts heaped against the corral fence like white dunes. 3 calves lay half buried near the lean-to. Jasper and Lucy plunged into the snow. They rubbed it back to life with burlap and straw, but the third stiffened despite every whispered promise. Lucy's shoulders shook once, then steadied. She took Jasper's oiled canvas coat, the sleeves dangling past her hands, and trudged on without complaint. A single line of moccasin tracks crossed the clean crust after noon. Jasper sighted the Winchester and stepped out, boots crunching. A lone figure approached through the swirling flurries, tall, lean, draped in a tattered army blanket stitched with beadwork. He stopped outside the gate, palms visible, eyes black as obsidian. "Need 2 moons," he said, the English lilted with U cadence. "Moved your fence so elk can pass. Trade rabbits for salt." Jasper nodded him inside. They squatted by the stove, steam rising from Nate's coat, over coffee. The visitor spoke little and watched much. Lucy slipped on the warm stone hearth, a cup flying from her mittened fingers. Nate's hand flashed, catching the mud before it shattered. He set it back upright, not a drop spilled. No rebuke, no glare, just quiet steadiness. Lucy's eyes flickered with something like relief. A seed of trust burrowed into winter soil. Night draped itself thick and silver. Jasper lay awake on his pallet, dead notices rustling like dried leaves in his thoughts. Lucy breathed deeply beside the stove, cheeks pink from heat. Nate sat cross-legged near the door, only half in the realm of sleep, as if listening to the wind's private language. Jasper's mind circled the same question. Was buying a child an act of mercy, or just another cruelty painted kinder colors? Good intent, he feared, did not wash away the ink of ownership. Outside, wolves began to sing. Their howls lifted over the drifts, haunting and ravenous. Nate rose without sound, touched Jasper's shoulder, and led him into the moon-washed yard. Pale light glistened on snow like spilled mercury. The wolves ghosted along the corral rails. Thin with hunger, Jasper raised his rifle. Nate laid a hand on the barrel, shaking his head. Then he cupped his palms and let out a low, uncanny scream, half cougar, half storm wind. The wolves stiffened, ears flat, then melted back into the timber line. "Little one watches you," Nate said, tilting his chin toward the warm window where Lucy's silhouette glimmered behind the curtain. "Teach courage, not fear." At breakfast, Jasper placed the folded indenture contract on the table beside the coffee tin. "Know anyone riding to Silverton Bank?" he asked. The paper felt heavier than iron. Nate studied the document, then Lucy's face. Without ceremony, he drew a deer-bone knife, split the pages down the middle, and fed them into the stove. Flame licked the edges to ash. Lucy gasped. Jasper felt every muscle tighten. Penalties for voiding legal papers could mean jail, forfeiture, ruin. "Paper binds only if we obey," Nate said, calm as fresh snow. Jasper exhaled, long and shaky. Then he offered his hand across the table. Lucy's smaller fingers slid into his. Nate placed his broad palm over both. 3 lives, 3 worlds, forging one fragile treaty in a kitchen that smelled of smoke and chicory. They tacked butcher paper to the wall and divided it into columns. Work, learn, Dream, under work they listed chores, mend the chicken wire, split cedar rails, patch the roof come thaw. Under learn Jasper wrote letters of the alphabet for Lucy to practice. Nate scrawled Euclips beside them, translating mountain, river, sky. When Lucy reached the dream column, she paused a long time, then printed the word school in careful capitals. Jasper stared at the empty space beneath her neat letters. Finally, he wrote a single word. Hope hand felt its weight settle gently, like snow on a quiet field. That evening, coyotes mourned the fading light. Jasper pulled his father's telescope from a wool sack and coaxed Lucy outside. He traced constellations across the frost-rimmed heavens, naming heroes, monsters, far-off seas of stars. She pointed at the brightest cluster and whispered, "Stone, star, because even broken things can shine." Jasper's throat knotted. In the white hush of the prairie, among 1,000 unblinking suns, a rancher, a child, and a silent wanderer stood together and began, without quite knowing it, to map a new country of the heart. Spring brought the thaw, and with it came mud ruts deep enough to swallow a boot and calves that wobbled like new legs on Glass Hollis Ranch, once groaning with the ache of age and disrepair, began to breathe a little easier. Fence lines stood straighter. The barn roof stopped leaking. Even the wind seemed to pass more gently, like it respected the grit stitched into the soil. Nate drifted in and out like smoke, never saying where he went, only returning with bundles of dried herbs, bones carved into charms, or rumors that clung to him like pine tar. He never brought news unless it mattered, and one dusk it did. "Rail can't pay wagon hit," he said without greeting, tossing down a sack of dried roots. Black Rock boys headed this way, their leader Vane Carver. Jasper's spine stiffened. He remembered Carver from an old logging dispute, a man who smiled while breaking bones and who thought fire solved most problems. Lucy paused mid-stir in the soup pot. Her hand trembled, but she didn't drop the spoon. They moved fast. Lanterns, doused. Horses hidden in the cellar under blankets and feed. Tables overturned to block doors. Rifles loaded. Lucy clutched the diary to her chest like it was armor. No one said it, but they all knew Carver wasn't here for money. He was here for revenge. The first shot cracked the night wide open. A barn lantern exploded in a fire, raining sparks on her dry feed dust. The air filled with smoke and orange light. Lucy screamed as a second shot punched into the ground near the porch. "Hand over the pelts." Carver's voice slurred from the dark, "or kiss your shack goodbye." Nate was gone before the echo faded, silent as snow melt. He moved left toward the shed. Jasper stood just inside the doorframe, rifle pressed to his cheek, breath held. Then flames bloomed inside the old hay shed. Nate's doing. Buying them seconds. A figure ran past one of Carver's men. Jasper fired once. The man spun and crumpled. With a cry, his rifle tumbling away, then Carver emerged from the smoke, dragging Lucy by the collar, pistol to her neck. "Drop it, Hollis," he barked. "You want her to end up like your barn?" Jasper's grip tightened. His finger hovered on the trigger. Lucy looked at him, calm beneath the soot. Her fingers twitched 3 taps. The pasture signal. Now, she stomped on Carver's instep and bit into his wrist. He howled. An arrow hissed through the firelit dark and buried itself in his thigh. Jasper surged forward and slammed into him. The pistol skidded across the ground as the 2 men rolled through mud and cinders. Jasper landed on top and pressed his forearm into Carver's throat. It would have been easy. One squeeze, one bullet, but Jasper stood, breathing hard, fist clenched. Nate appeared beside him, bow still half drawn. Jasper shook his head. "Law takes him," he said. "We don't become what we fight." Carver whimpered on the ground, blood seeping into his pants. Lucy picked up her diary and hugged it to her chest. They didn't sleep that night, but they stayed warm, not from fire, just the way a shared breath can hold a roof together. The next day, Nate brewed pine needle tea in silence while Lucy watched him strip bark for arrow fletching. She copied every movement with a reverence Jasper recognized, respect that had no words, only gestures. Jasper worked on the barn plank, hammer ringing in the morning stillness. He paused mid-swing and looked at Nate. "I needed family more than hands," he said. "Didn't know it till now." "Family is grown," Nate replied, "like pine and stone, slow, but strong." Lucy charcoal brushed those words inside the stable wall later that day. Beside it she drew a pine tree with 3 roots and the sun shining from the side. Word spread fast. Carver's capture made news across the territory. Days later, A wagon creaked up the road bearing Mrs. Grantham, the county school teacher. Bundled in wool and curiosity, "We've got 3 open seats in the schoolhouse," she said, eyeing Lucy kindly. "One's yours if you want it, Lucy." Froze. Jasper crouched beside her. "If you want it, we'll manage." Nate stepped forward and placed a perfectly cured coyote pelts in the teacher's arms. "Tuition," he said, "not debt." The next morning, a new column appeared on the cabin's chore ledger. It was labeled Grow. Under it, Lucy wrote, "Read, Gallop, keep promises." Jasper added, "Plant orchard, Nate," with careful fingers. Etched the U word Connaught beside it. Balance. That night, with Carver locked in the jailhouse and snow finally melting from the hills, they sat under the stars again. Lucy sipped warm milk on the porch while Jasper sharpened a fence post spike. She stared into the dark beyond the fence. "I thought fear would swallow my voice," she said. "Fear is loud," Jasper answered, "but courage is just louder when it matters." He handed her the diary. She flipped to a blank page, pen trembling slightly. Then she wrote the quote slowly, letter by letter. At the bottom of the page, she sketched 3 interlocking hands, small, weathered, and strong. The fire crackled behind them. Coyotes howled again, but this time they didn't sound so far away. Summer came humming with locusts and dust. The sun rose earlier, stayed longer, and baked the red earth until even the wind seemed reluctant to move. The corral gate creaked from heat-swollen hinges, and Jasper stood beside it, staring down at a choice that might break the year in half: sell his best mare, or the sack of seed grain they'd been saving since March. They were $30 short. 2 days left on the loan note. Lucy sat at the table, flipping a pencil between her fingers. Finally, she opened the diary, turned to a blank page, and gently placed her river stone in the center. "Stones aren't heavy," she said, "if you share them." Jasper looked at her. No 12-year-old should know things like that, but she did. She knew because life had written its weight across her bones, and still she stood. That evening, a familiar silhouette emerged over the ridge. Nate, leading a stocky gray pony loaded with something wrapped in oilcloth and fur. He untied the bundle and revealed half a dozen prime beaver pelts, soft and glinting with worth. "Mountain Man owed me," he said, voice flat as ever. "He pays you now." Jasper didn't ask questions. They rode out at dawn, the sky still, pink around the edges, and paid the debt with a single breath of silver. The banker licked his thumb and counted twice. Outside, the sun pierced through cloud breaks, and 3 shadows fell long and even across the street. There were no chains left on any of them, only what they carried by choice. They didn't even make it home before trouble broke. Gunfire erupted near the telegraph office. Screams echoed, boots scattered. The last of the Black Rock boys had escaped. Custody during transport. 2 of them, armed, desperate. One lunged and grabbed Lucy, dragging her into the street as a human shield. Time seemed to slow. Jasper stepped forward, unarmed. "Take me," he said, hands open. "Let her go." The bandit sneered and leveled his pistol. Lucy acted first. She slammed her heel down into his shin, twisted like a wildcat, and dropped. The shot fired, grazing Jasper's upper arm. Then a blur. Nate's arrow sang through the air, pinning the thug's sleeve to a wagon board. Jasper tackled him before he could shoot again. Sheriff Conley arrived moments later, cursing and panting, dragging both men into cuffs. A town reporter pushed in with ink-stained fingers, and questions flying. "What happened here? That girl just she-how? Did you do that?" Lucy brushed dirt from her skirt. "They taught me courage lives longer," she said, jerking a thumb toward the men behind her. The quote made the front page of the Silverton Gazette. Underneath, the caption read, "Young ranch girl foils outlaw with wit, grit, and help from her family." Weeks passed. The land softened. They planted apple saplings where floodwater had once scarred the soil, row after row of tender green shoots with white blossoms trembling in the breeze. Lucy pressed one of those blossoms into her diary beside the word resilience. That night they sipped honey coffee by the porch rail. Coyotes were quiet for once. "I want to teach," Lucy said. "I want to start a ranch co-op." Jasper said, "I want to map what's been forgotten." Nate added. The silence afterward wasn't hesitation, it was agreement. Dreams, finally, didn't feel like luxuries. They felt like next steps. Strangers became visitors. Visitors became neighbors. Children came for Lucy's evening readings by lantern light. Ranchers passed through with pelts and promises. Even the bank offered Jasper a new loan at favorable terms. He declined. The land had taught him what worth really meant. Then came the quiet goodbye at dawn. Nate stood near the barn, saddlebag packed, bow wrapped in oilskin. Jasper walked up holding Lucy's river stone. He placed it in Nate's hand without a word. "Find us when the atlas is done," Jasper said. "Rivers remember stones," Nate replied, mounting slow. Lucy watched him ride off. Eyes dry, but shining. She wrote one last line in the diary before breakfast. "We planted trees whose fruit we may never taste, but someone will." She signed it in ink, Lucy Hollis. Below it, Jasper added, counting blessings higher than Mesa Cliffs. The first autumn morning came crisp and golden. Lucy rang the cast iron triangle with a clear chime. Jasper followed her to the edge of the orchard, where the tallest sapling now stood in quiet victory. They buried a tin box beneath its roots. Inside, the diary's first page, Nate's carved Kanaga's symbol, and a small braid of hair Lucy had cut when she first arrived. "Someone will dig here," Lucy whispered, and no courage grew thick. Jasper ruffled her hair. They stood in silence, side by side, watching the orchard breathe. No chains, no dead notes, just the rustle of leaves and the sky widening above them. The camera lifts over Stone River Ranch, where apple leaves shimmer in slow motion, cattle, speckled bronze pastures, and sunlight hits the cabin windows like warm memory. Jasper sits inside reading aloud, his voice gentle. The wind carries his words to a distant ridge where Nate pauses beside a pine tree, river stone in hand, listening. Then he smiles just once and keeps walking. Voice over, "Out here, courage is currency, trust the only shelter, and family the one thing you can't buy, only earn." If their story stirred your heart, hitch your wagon to ours. Like this tale. Comment your hardest won lesson and subscribe so the fire keeps burning. Remember, stones moved together can shift a river and build a bridge to the next story. Fade out on an endless, open horizon.